All right, welcome in. A very happy Saturday. It is last call here on WagerTalk TV. I'm Joe Raineri in for Kelly Stewart here today, but the song, as they say, remains the same. Championship week in college football, 6 games, big games anyway, that remain on the card. We're, of course, going to talk to our good friend Art the Caesar live from the Risk Room at the Westgate Superbook. We've got Gianni getting ready to tell us where all that steam is. It is a huge day across the sports landscape here, as not only do we have college football, we've got a huge UFC card to go over. Kyle Anthony is going to drop by. We're going to talk some of the fights on that card here to get down on. Of course, Teddy Covers will be here, also talking and taking any questions about the college football games that you guys may have. And we'll round it out with a huge college hoops card with Bryan Leonard talking about some of his favorite games, also taking your questions. So you guys know how this works. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us if you haven't done so already. Drop those questions in the chat as we welcome in the one, the only. He's been up since Tuesday, from what I understand. Art the Caesar live from the Westgate. Art, what is going on, brother? 6 games. And then we've got pandemonium coming up with the playoffs. But what are we seeing and early this morning here as far as the action goes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Joe, 6 games left, and people are ready to fire on these games, People who obviously have the appetite for this college football. This is kind of the end until we get to bowl season, obviously the playoffs. Let's just start with the 2 early games. We get killed on Arizona State winning the Big 12, so we really need Iowa State to come through for us. And that game opened, Arizona State minus 2.5. We're at Pick'em right now. I've even seen some places that have Iowa State minus 1. So incredible movement there. Totals really only dropped half a point from our opener of 51 to 50.5. That's been a market move. The MAC game, Ohio, Miami, Ohio. We opened 44.5. It's now 44, 2.5. We have good money on Miami of Ohio. We will need Ohio in that game. That's the report of the 2 early games.
Those are the 2 early games there, of course. 12 o'clock Eastern time kickoff, guys, coming up in just about an hour. Ohio and Miami of Ohio, which might get a little confusing, I would imagine, behind the counter there, Art, when somebody comes up and says, give me Ohio. You're like, yeah, who? We'll do that again. Iowa State, Arizona State, the early one. When we talked bet on it during the week, you were amazed about how little interest or handle there was regarding Clemson and SMU. Has that picked up as the week went along?
Yeah, that definitely has, and that game's interesting. That game, we really haven't even deviated much off of our opening numbers. We opened 2.5, 55. We're still 2.5. We're 55.5 right now. We hit as high as 56, and then we saw some sharp money come in on the under at that 56. The action is really split, and honestly, for both of those teams to win the ACC in the future book is good for us. So we'll win on either side. And right now it's split action. There really hasn't been sharp action on either side. It's really just been public money that has come in on that game.
And you're seeing, Art, the biggest handle game for you guys right now is, I'm going to guess, either Georgia, Texas, or Penn State, Oregon. What seems to be rolling in here most this week?
Yeah, it's definitely Georgia and Texas, and obviously that's the one game that's kind of like the standalone spot where it's going to sit right in the middle of the card. And so you're going to get that, and obviously the matchup with the 2 name brands. But I think when you get to the night game, when you get to Penn State, Oregon, because that's the last game of the night, like that's going to draw a great handle. And that's actually seen a lot of public money on Penn State. We're about 60-40 ticket count on Penn State. We were 3.5, so there were a lot of people who were able to get 3.5. We're now 3. Total's gone up from 49.5 to 50. And, right now, as it stands, we'll need Oregon in the game. That could obviously change over the next 8 hours, but as we stand, we'll need Oregon small. And we'll probably need Texas right now because of all the early money that came in on Georgia at +3. And the total's actually gone up from us from 49 opener to a 50.5 opener. No sharp money, nothing to report there. We just moved with the market on that total.
Kind of crazy. I would imagine, Art, depending on the outcomes of the earlier games, That Penn State Oregon game, and even Clemson SMU both getting ready to go 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight. There might be a lot of people pushing in and trying to get back here when it's all said and done. What about the Marshall Louisiana game, the Sun Belt? That too, 7:30 Eastern time kick tonight. Any sort of movement in that game?
Yeah, and we talked about this when we talked on Bet On It. Marshall opened 4. We got to as high as 6 on the game. It was a little bit of a nibble back on Marshall at 6. We're now sitting 5.5. Total hasn't budged from our opener. We've been 58.5 across the board all week. So with all of the influx of Louisiana money, despite some sharp money on 6 with Marshall, we'll still need Marshall in the game.
Interesting. All right, there you got it here. Art the Caesar live from the Risk Room. Listen, Art, get some rest, my man. I know kickoff coming up here. You still got plenty to do over there at the Westgate. As always, brother, we appreciate the time. We'll see you again here for the NFL edition at some point on Last Call. Art the Caesar over at the Westgate. We appreciate it as always. If you're just joining us, what in the hell are you waiting for? Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, become part of the WagerTalk TV family, because we bring guys like, I don't know, VR, Gianni the Greek in the house, ready to roll here on what is going to be a limited card, Gianni, here in college football, but plenty of college hoops and other things, and UFC, which you've been on all week. But talk to me here on what you have seen with these 6 big games remaining. What kind of action and steam have you been seeing here?
Yeah, and be cautious on Championship Saturday. The money's made during the bowl games. The betting syndicates I work with, they'll sprinkle here and there this week, but the real money gets made during the bowl games. There's an influx of recreational bettors. The limits are a lot higher. These guys live to make as much money as they can over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So today, here's what's going on. They jumped on Iowa State at +2, 2.5, and +2. That's why Iowa State is now a favorite. Kind of more money on the dog from the betting public that I'm seeing in the back end. Also, Miami O got bet by the Sharps. They're also getting bet by the public as well. It's all one-sided. So that's why I heard Art say they need Ohio. Pretty much every book I spoke to needs the same side, Ohio. And that's what happens when you get the Sharps and the public lining up on the same side. That UL and Marshall game is what stuck out to me a lot, because you're seeing a difference of opinion once the line moved. Like the early money came down. They thought Louisiana Lafayette is a great bet at -3.5, at -4. But once it got up to that -6, like multiple groups came in and bought it up. So this is expected to be a closer game, I think, than some expect, especially when the line started moving. And Georgia at 3. Like usually what will happen is I'll get the order, and then if it's not available, they'll throw out another order. Like, okay, you could lay up the -122 if you could get that number. Or they'll even sometimes say, take the 2.5, but if you could get even money or something. Not the case here. 3 or nothing. They want 3 or absolutely nothing on Georgia. So it's one of those key numbers that they really want to take advantage of there. And that's pretty much what's really sticking out in college football so far. And the one team total I could share is a first half team total, and it's the under in Iowa State. They went under 13.5. They came back, went under 13. And I think I laid like up to 150 to get that at one point. So it's probably a lot higher if it's even available. But that's pretty much what's going on in college football. You nailed it. The focus from these groups today is college basketball, college basketball, college basketball. They've just been firing away all morning at college basketball. So there's going to be like 100x the amount of money, of sharp money being bet on college basketball compared to these 5-6 college football games. So pay attention to the moves, line moves, a lot more in college basketball than in college football. Because again, it seems like a lot of these lines have stabilized now in college football, and any big steam move would have already been hit unless the public knocks a line out of whack. I just don't see that happening. Most of you see are stuck at key numbers right now.
So let me ask you this, Gianni. Are you seeing the same type of late steam with college hoops that we've seen with the NFL and in college football day of? Or are you seeing it late, or are you seeing a lot of it early, and once it moves, and that's the end of it?
Early. I get NBA overnights. I don't really like to bet them, Joe, to be honest with you. Like, I give them to somebody else because I know a lot of times what they're doing with those overnights is just trying to get out ahead of a number. And then they come back and they bet the other side later. So if you get the wrong side of a scalp or a middle, you're constantly losing while they're winning. So you want to be careful with that kind of stuff. I pay attention to when they start firing the college basketball in the morning, next morning. Yes, exactly. Early, because remember, when it comes to college basketball, it's a very profitable sport for betting syndicates. They're not working together. Sports betting is a zero-sum game. So there's a race to take advantage of these numbers, and that's exactly what you see. It's kind of like as soon as the lines go up and the limits are open, not the overnights, it comes morning, boom, 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 boom. They're firing. And throughout the entire day, Joe, betting second halves, not a lot of first halves, mostly games, sides, and totals. And then when it gets to halftime, they're betting second halves. But they're firing so many games. Just for example, real quickly, like one account that I have that I bet college basketball on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We bet like 15 games already. And it's not even 8, it's 8 a.m. We've already got 15 sides and totals in the account. So we're crazy. Firing college baskets.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I can't wait, Gianni, to see what happens with the playoffs once we get past today. And with these 12-team playoffs, I'm wondering what the steam moves are going to be during the week. You think that's we know during bowl season, but when it comes to this playoffs, what kind of action are you expecting here?
It's the first time with all these playoff teams. So there's a lot of unknowns. Like we don't have a big sample size of how this is going to play out. I'm even a little I don't have anything to lean that back on. Like this is what usually happens we have with March Madness. Going into March Madness, what do we say? Oh, the 5 versus the 12, the 8 versus the 9. Like we have this long history of these matchups. We just don't have that yet in college football. We're used to that smaller playoff format and stuff like that. So I just think you're going to see more action, more volume, and I also think that's where you're going to see a lot of late action. Because those are the kind of games that you get heavy public money. And again, public may not get respect, but they bet a lot of money, and those lines will move because of it. And I think that's when you'll see those groups taking advantage of those playoff matchups and stuff like that. But like, again, it's just college basketball and a lot of MMA today too. This UFC pay-per-view card is attracting a lot of betting action. It's the last pay-per-view of 2024, and I'll be there actually tonight, so I'm excited for it.
Well, VR wouldn't be right if the chat room hadn't asked for a little UFC gold. So, is there a fight that you are most interested in here tonight?
Brother, I'm good. I love these guys. Smash that like button because Joe is the man. One of the few guys in the industry that is who you see on camera is who you see behind the camera. I'm just going to go through the screen because I'm not even saying these are premiums. This is my leans right away. I'll just go from the bottom up. Chiesa, take Weidman, and the under. You're going to get about 2-1 to go to the under on the Weidman side. Take Brian Battle over Randy Brown. I know he missed weight by 4 pounds. That just means he didn't try. If he missed weight by 1.5 pounds, I'd be worried. That means he was killing himself trying to shade that last pound. But when you're overweight by 4 pounds, that means you didn't even try to cut weight. So you have an advantage over your opponent. It's just going to cost you 20-30% of your purse. But I think that was the play there. Evelo of Aljamain, I'm not messing with. Luque, I think, is a live dog, but Garimba's probably going to beat him. Dominic Ray is going to beat Anthony Smith, but the line's not worth it. Duhu Choi is a live dog against Landwehr. Bryce Mitchell, Gracie, bet the over. It's a little juicy, but you got to bet the over there. Cyril Gahn's going to beat Volkov, but Volkov's the better bet. Ian Gary's going to fight for your money at plus 300. I actually bet him. He's going to lose that bet, but it's still a great bet. He should not be plus 300. It should be about plus 200. So you have a huge edge there. And I think Pantoja successfully defends his flyweight crown against the debut fighter who's got good history over there in Rising, but it's next level in the UFC. So those are a couple of my thoughts. I'm still going to narrow it down after afternoon before I head over to T-Mobile. But hopefully that helps me in the right direction.
And that's why, Yanni, it would help to head over to your page at WagerTalk.com there, brother. Beside UFC, locked and loaded, what are the clients getting over there today?
Brother, today they're going to get college basketball, college football, and UFC with a 5% in UFC, and I'm coming off a losing UFC card, which is a good thing because this is my best year in MMA. I've lost in other sports. This is going to be a losing year when the dust settles. I tell you when I win, I tell you when I lose. I've won 8 of the last 9, but I'm now going to be able to say I've won 8 of the last 10 because between now and the end of December, I'm not going to win back what I'm down because I don't chase. It's just going to have to be what it is. But I'm coming off a losing UFC card, and that's the sport where I've done the most damage. That the ROI is ridiculous, the units one's ridiculous, number one last 365, number one in 220-24, all that nonsense. So the MMA is what you want to be on, and I got a 5%er there, and then the NFL. I've been crushing the big bets, over 65% on those this year, been very selective. I've already released a 5% for Sunday NFL, and the Steam Room is live tomorrow, going over every NFL game at 8 a.m. Pacific. So, yeah, I'm real excited about this weekend. Like I said, thank you for having me on. And again, whether you follow or fade, I hope you guys do some damage this weekend. And the Bulls are coming. The Bulls are coming. So
yes, they are.
Get ready to fire.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. All right, Gianni, get out of here, brother. We appreciate it. As always, make sure you visit them over at WagerTalk.com and take advantage of the $199 all-access deal right now at WagerTalk.com. That's all access for the rest of the year. So take advantage while you can on loaded cards, guys, across the board, whether it be NFL games, whether it be the college football playoffs, whether it be college hoops, NBA. Plenty of opportunities for you guys to make it one hell of a profitable end to 2024. Just $199 now. Visit your favorite handicapper over at WagerTalk.com. And as long as you're hanging with us, hit the damn like button, please. We'd appreciate it, as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so, because we got another guy here that knows a thing or two about the UFC, as we welcome in the one and only Kyle Anthony here. And I love Kyle. It feels like it's been a while that we've had this kind of card in the UFC, where big name fights, a lot of hype around what we're seeing here tonight. How good is this card in your estimation?
Yeah, this is, stacked from, you're talking the early prelims all the way up to the main event. There are absolutely good betting opportunities, but the one thing about it that I've probably said throughout this year is it doesn't have to be a high level event to bet on it. I know a lot of people, it gets the eyes on it. We've been profitable throughout this year, and, it's going to be another profitable year betting MMA over 74 units. And it's a great spot. It's exciting when it's near the end, but this card, I think, definitely brings profit, and I think it also brings excitement. So this is definitely, I would say, one of the best cards of the year. Recognizable names and some title fights in there.
All right, so let's dive into a couple. And again, guys, if you're joining us here for the first time on Last Call, drop your comments, any questions you have about any of the fights. We still got plenty of college football to go over. Teddy Covers is coming up here in a few. Bryan Leonard is going to break down any of the college hoops questions you guys have. So hang in there. And again, any UFC questions you got, Kyle is the guy. Let's talk about Pantoja here. What are we expecting in this fight here tonight, Kyle?
Yeah, this one here, you've got Alejandro Pantoja versus Kai Asakura, and this is really an odd kind of setup here. I know it's the main event, but this is the only odd part about this is that they brought over a guy from Ryzen who was a champion over there and came over. Now, one of the biggest things when I look at fights, break them down, is, you got a debuting guy, which I think is already something that is, you don't always get the best out of the guy, whether it's nerves, it's a cardio dump. But now you've got a guy that's coming in on a UFC debut, a main event, and also on a title fight. That is just a lot that you have to climb right away. So I think that already kind of sets him, kind of puts him behind the eight ball, I think, already when you're breaking this fight down. But the other thing that you have to look at in this fight is the weight. And that's something with Kai Asakura that he has normally been fighting. This is going to be at flyweight. And last time he even fought at flyweight was back in December of 2021. And in that fight, he lost. And since then, he had two fights, which were in 2023. Both of them were up a division in the bantamweight division. Now, yes, he made weight yesterday, and that's great. And I didn't think there was going to be a problem with that at all. I just think that obviously lowers down when you're talking about cardio. You're talking about durability. You're talking about energy. You're talking about all of those things definitely take a hit. Now, Kai's going to go for it early. He's going to look to throw big shots. He's primarily really a striker here. And that's the thing with Pantoja. He is extremely well-rounded. And that already, again, you've got a lot of things. You're talking about a weight cut. You're talking about debut in the UFC main event. And now you've got also the stylistically, for Pantoja, it's a great setup for him. And you're looking at it, the path of least resistance for him is going to be the wrestling. He's going to look to push forward. He's going to look to crash the pocket, get you down, get in your face. And again, early can be a little bit tough for him, but I do think his jiu-jitsu is just going to absolutely dominate if he gets his fight to the ground. I do believe he's going to do that. He's not going to look to stand and strike. And also, this being a 5-rounder, I think also helps Pantoja, who is a guy that's been able to go out there and really tough it out. He's durable. He's a guy that does not get finished. Out of his 33 fights, he's never been finished in his career. So he's a guy that takes this to the distance. And that's kind of where I'm going with this fight here, is that I do think that early it's going to be competitive at some particular situation there. But I think, middle of this fight, I think that's where Pantoja really puts a stamp on this and really gets this fight to the ground. So Pantoja's sitting around that minus 280 mark, somewhere around there. You can get Pantoja inside the distance around minus 110. And I think that's a really strong number and his most probable outcome here. So I think that's a nice path for him to get the victory.
You think he get over 2.5?
I think you're playing with fire there, because that's kind of where I see this fight kind of ending in that 2-3 range. So I think it's actually lined pretty solid there. So I do like just kind of getting that inside the distance, and I think the number is pretty strong for a 5-round. This is a 3-rounder. I may think a little bit differently about inside the distance, but you got a lot of opportunity here for a killer in Pantoja. I think it's inside the distance for him.
So another fight, and I don't understand, why is Sterling on the prelim card here? What am I missing? Am I right? How is this fight not on the main card? And late at night, I don't get what's going on. What are we missing with this fight?
Yeah, I don't really understand it either there. It's you've got, Movsar Evloev, who is, an absolute killer. He's undefeated. You would think they would even want to build him up also. And you've got Sterling, who is a former champion moving up in weight. And it just kind of seems like it's a good situation for Aljamain, as in just like, a good fight to kind of just headline, whether it's the prelims or even early on the main card. I mean, we've got Crime Gracie, on the main card against Bryce Mitchell. That should be an easy switch there. So kind of interesting there. But when you're looking at this fight here, I think the one thing that you've got here is that, this is a setup for whoever wins this will probably fight for the title. And I think that really brings a lot to this. Again, it probably should be a little higher up there. But the thing about it is what Movsar does so well is that both of these guys kind of are the same type of fighter, where they've got some good striking and they lean on the wrestling. And that is really where I kind of see that it kind of hurts Aljo, because he's an awkward striker. He's going to move forward and he can lean on that wrestling when he kind of has guys who aren't as good of wrestlers or who don't have the striking and just wrestling. Movsar, I think, really covers, Aljo everywhere in this fight goes, whether you're striking, whether he's looking for takedowns, whether he's looking to, just top control. And I think that Aljo is a good offensive wrestler, but when it comes to defensive wrestling, I do think he struggles. And I think that's where he can kind of push the pace a little bit. And that also leads me to kind of where I would think that this fight would go. And you're looking at it here where Movsar is 18-0. He's got 11 decisions, 4 submissions, 3 knockouts. But since in the UFC, he is 8-0 and no finishes. And this is a guy who is never really seeming to kind of push for that. He's fine kind of, he's been in some tough situations. He's got out of those situations. He's had some close fights, but at least the wrestling and top control's been there. So that's kind of where I'm going with it here. I mean, Movsar, again, around minus 265. You can get him to win by points at around minus 135. And I think that's a good price, getting off the big number. And again, a very likely outcome for a guy who's done it 8 straight times in the UFC.
Kind of crazy. Who's got the better gas tank, you think, in that one, Kyle?
I would probably go Movsar. I would probably go. But again, it's the thing about it is Aljo going up in weight, I think, could help him with that. And anyone who's taken that dog money, I don't blame anybody who's taken dog money in Aljo. Again, his pedigree is high. He comes from a great camp. I know Ray Longo well. I mean, it's a great camp there. I just think now he's 35. This is a point where Evloev is 30. I just think this is a point now where things can tilt down for Aljo, and this is really where that Movsar can probably really start to hit his prime and be really moving all forward in the division.
All right, so let's say we got one question coming in, Kyle. Then tell us what you got going on here over at WagerTalk. What do you think about Ian Gary over 2.5 rounds in his fight here today?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight here where I do favor Gary in this spot here. I do think the plus money, and I know Gianni talked about it. I think that the line is just way too wide here. You got an 18-0 guy, a 15-0 guy. But the one thing about it when I'm looking at this fight here is that, yes, Shavkat is 100% finish rate. He's going to go for it. He's going to push forward. But I do think that this fight does have legs, and I do think that this is more. You've got someone in Ian Gary, who is a guy that's really going to look to point fight. He's going to work at range. He's got great distance management. He's not going to look to push the pace. So I think that's where this fight could go over, is because I think he's going to just point fight, slap at the legs, chop away. He does not want to get into any kind of scrambles with Shavkat. Shavkat is elite when it comes to his grappling game. And I do like also the fact that Ian Gary has Charles Oliveira in his corner. He's been training Bashuta box. That's just a great camp. And having Charles Oliveira in your corner when you're fighting a guy who has great grappling, that's going to be great coaching for him when he's on the sidelines, giving him some instructions there. But I do think that if he gets taken down, he can survive. So I do like that over there in that spot.
All right, there you go. Theo Green, appreciate you hanging with us here today. And Kyle, tell us right now over at your page, obviously a loaded UFC card. What do you got there for folks?
Yeah, so I have a 5% max bet, 13-1 this year on them. Again, we're 74 units in profit with 2 UFC events left. It's been an absolutely great year. Again, big cards are great, and so are the small cards that aren't as recognizable.
Yeah.
Always do have some great betting opportunities here. So I've got 4 plays right now. I may be adding a 5th, but 4 plays. 3 of them are at plus money, and the ROI number 1 at WagerTalk. So again, we're just we're cooking here, and we're going to finish the year strong. So head over to WagerTalk and grab that play.
Absolutely. Great advice there, Kyle. Appreciate it as always, brother. Get out of here. We got a huge fight card coming up there. Make sure you visit Kyle over at WagerTalk.com. All right. This is the part of the program where we start diving into 6 games in college football. And then we've got, of course, college basketball coming up. Bryan Leonard will stop by. We'll talk about some of these bigger games here today, including I believe it's just about to tip here with Kansas State at St. John's. This actually happens to be the game that Kelly is at, which is while I'm sitting here, she is at the Kansas State St. John's game, and something tells me she's not on St. John's. I'll just leave it at that. Teddy Covers in the house, hanging out with us here, Teddy. Championship week here. Some interesting games and interesting movement here so far. We got a bunch of questions coming in the chat room, and if you guys want to ask Teddy anything, by all means, drop it in the chat. We'll get those college football questions answered for you. Teddy, the noon kickoffs here: Iowa State, Arizona State, Ohio, and Miami of Ohio. Is there were you anything about these 2 games that you liked more than the other?
Well, I bet the MAC championship game for the clients. It's a client play for me. And look, you have me on after Gianni and Kyle, who are the 2 single most energetic people on earth. I'll do the best I can. It's not even 9 o'clock in the morning here in Vegas yet, but I'm struggling to match those guys. I'll tell you what, they bring it. I'll give them all the credit in the world, but I'm not that. So I'm in play on Miami against Ohio U. That's the one.
All right, so give me Iowa State, Arizona State, Teddy. Coming up at 11:30, bunch of questions came in on this one regarding, it appears Iowa State seems to be taking a whole lot of love in the market here. You agree with that?
So it's the kind of game where anyone that's favored, the dog's going to take the money. And that happened early, and so we saw the early swing towards the Sun Devils. Now we're seeing the late swing back towards the Cyclones. And I'm not surprised. Look, when you talk about the pedigree of the programs, all right, Iowa State is above Arizona State. We talk about expectations. We talk about base level of talent. Arizona State's been an overachieving team all season. And if you're basing it on body of work, their body of work's pretty darn good. But that defensive pedigree that Campbell brings to the table for the Cyclones is something that bettors are paying attention to this morning. And I'm not surprised that we've seen the money flow back on Iowa State. That was my lean as a dog. But, this is truly a coin flip type game. I'm surprised we've seen a little bit of over money this morning. I thought we'd see nothing but under money here. These are 2 defenses that we trust. And for the majority of these games that we're going to talk about, I'm like, yeah, lean under. This is one of those for sure. But sidewise, really, this is a coin flip game. I expect someone to win by a field goal at the end.
It really does. It does feel like that with these two teams in it. And Matt Campbell, his biggest issues were trying to get past OU and Texas all those years, Teddy. He ain't got to worry about them anymore in the Big 12. So maybe, just maybe, this is Iowa State's time. The 4 o'clock game, interesting, with Georgia and Texas. And I know I saw some questions coming in and wanted to know, what does Teddy think about maybe Texas in the first half laying a half a point? I mean, pretty much a pick-em situation in the first half. Would you rather split this game in half, Teddy, or how would you approach it?
I thought about this game a ton this week, and I haven't bet it. I haven't. And the more I think, the more I will like the Texas side. I'd rather have Texas than Georgia. I don't want a team off an 8 overtime win in which they left it all on the field last weekend. And now, obviously, you're facing a pretty big step up in class. Texas is as good as anyone in the country. And it's certainly a Texas team that's going to remember what happened in the first meeting between these two teams. And I'm not convinced that is repeatable for Georgia. Look, Georgia's been something of a disappointment basically all year. They had the opening blowout over Clemson, and since then, if you've been back in Georgia, all you've done is lose money. They have not lived up to expectations. It has not been a banner year. And you find, I don't mind teams like Georgia. I love teams when it comes to bowl season, teams that finish the regular season. I think it's, I'm trying to remember if it's 25% or 33% ATS. But the bad point spread teams in the regular season are, they flips come bowl season. You oftentimes find value with those squads. Not this week with Georgia. So it's Texas a priori. I'm not betting on the team that's just coming off the 8 overtime win, and I'd rather have the team that lost the first meeting. I just don't know if Texas is good enough to win by margin, I don't. And I know it's going to be an all Georgia crowd, So in terms of splitting the bet up first half versus full game, I don't have an argument with Texas first half, all right? I don't have an argument splitting your wager Texas first half, Texas full game. I really don't. I will say this: if you play Texas, make sure you're laying 2.5, not 3. That's the difference between being a casual recreational bettor and being a bettor that has a chance to win. Is finding the good numbers and making sure you're betting the good numbers. So this is one of those games where right now the line is absolutely split. All right, you can find 2.5s with the favorite, you can find 3s with the dog, and if you bet either one, get that number. Because if you don't, it's hard to win. It's harder to win.
Yeah, especially with Teddy, I'm still struggling to figure out how the hell we're getting over 50 points in this game. I don't know if I'm looking at this wrong, but it just feels like it was 52.5. I think the first game closed, and it didn't sniff 50 there with a 30-15 game. Are we getting over 50 points in this game? It doesn't feel like it, right?
So here's a problem with the under. All right. You're talking about two teams that have playmakers. The first meeting was a defensive slugfest, and they got to 45, and it wasn't like the ball was moving up and down the field. It wasn't like anyone was playing with pace. It wasn't like anything. And they still got to 45. So it's like you're one touchdown away from being over this total. And when you're talking about teams like both these teams, capable of scoring on offense, on defense, and on special teams. Big play touchdowns go a long way towards cashing overs. And this is a game that absolutely has multiple big play touchdown potential. Now, do I see either of these offenses grinding out yards and clock and moving up and down the field against these two Ds? Probably not. But could we see enough big plays, a handful of big plays, makes a big difference when it comes to cashing this under? So lean in that direction, but I ain't going to bet it.
Right. Well, I think anybody, whichever team can establish the run is probably going to win this game because neither did a very good job in that first game. So, and we've got two quarterbacks that have been a little turnover prone, and it certainly cost Texas in that first game there. Teddy, also, I know we talked yesterday on the college football kickoff show, which I would encourage you guys to check out. The link is in the description there yesterday, but you did talk about this Marshall, Louisiana game that's coming up also tonight. It's a fascinating game, and we talked about how Marshall, it's kind of hard to go against a team that's 11-1 against the number this year, Teddy. All Marshall does is cover games. Are they covering this one, getting what, 5.5? Because the market money just coming right in on Louisiana.
Yeah, I agree with that market money, you know? I mean, Marshall was the beneficiary this year of being a little bit undervalued. You know, they're plus 21 at Virginia Tech, they lose by 17. They're plus 40 at Ohio State, they lose by 35. They spent all season kind of doing, you know, in those, we covered. And of course, you know, the only conference loss came in a game where they were up by 20 points with 7 minutes left. All right. The last couple of weeks, kind of stealing games. They stole the game against James Madison. You know, they stole the game against Old Dominion in a sense. But you got to know this. Coach Huff is flirting with other jobs. All right. Everyone's saying that after this game, he's going to announce he's going to take the Southern Miss job, or at least that's the rumor. And it's a strong rumor. It's been around. He had to deny it this week. I mean, and that's a big distraction when your coach and your assistants are sending out resumes and not putting together game plans. That to me is just something you have to pay attention to. And when you have a team that's overachieved, and Marshall's overachieved, you know, they really have. The breaks have gone their way. That's how you go 10-1-1 ATS or 11-1 ATS. And they've done it without building up a huge betting bandwagon, you know? I mean, a lot of times a team goes 11-1 ATS, everyone's on it. You know, all of a sudden you look, you're like, oh, wow, Marshall's covered again. Oh, Marshall covered again. I don't think they're the better of the two teams. I worry about the coach and his staff going elsewhere, and I could only lay with Louisiana in this ballgame, despite Marshall's great point spread success this season. Only one of these two teams has a defense we can trust. That's the Raging Cajuns. And I agree with the market. That move as well there, Teddy. 5.5 now is what we're seeing. 58 is a total. Speaking of totals, I believe in the check, is it Fatone24 wants to know about the total in Penn State, Oregon. Wants to know your thoughts about this being played indoor at Lucas Oil. Is there an advantage to Oregon here, which, usually faster, bigger, stronger, or is there an advantage to the total at all being indoors here? Well, it's certainly in terms of, you talk about a fast track and you talk about no weather conditions and you talk about a team in Oregon that's pretty darn good. And you don't necessarily want to expect the Ducks offense to click on all cylinders where they're in Madison, or in Ann Arbor. But on a field like this, one might think that this defense, this offense actually would click on all cylinders. Now, Penn State may be able to do enough defensively to, I don't know that Penn State's. I'm not sold on Penn State, all right? I'd rather have side than total in this game. I think Oregon, we're seeing threes. Again, the wise guys love to put some Penn State. Everyone's talking about statistical profiles, and Penn State's statistical profile is really good. I get it. If you watch Penn State, eye test, when they needed to get stops in key games, they didn't get the stops. That concerns me significantly here against Oregon. Lean over, lean Ducks. Don't make it look. It's going to be an interesting one here, Teddy. And I believe you locked and loaded. You mentioned in the MAC here today. How about anything else? College hoops. What do you got locked and loaded at your page at WagerTalk? Yeah, we got a bunch of early start today. I got early start college football. We got early start college hoops. Check. I mean, literally, now's the time to go over to the page and check it out. Of course, we're locked and loaded for NFL for tomorrow. I'm passing in the NBA. It's been a really crappy NBA week for me, and sometimes, you know how it is. You're not seeing it clearly. You're working for sports. All right, let's leave the NBA alone for a day or two. We'll come back. So I left the NBA alone for today, but we're involved in college hoops. We're involved in college football. We got NFL locked and loaded for the weekend, and we're running good in all three of those sports. Real good. In fact, so check out the homepage, wt.buzz/TC. Early start action. First one, kickoff in 15 minutes. So you want to get on board right now. Now's the time, Teddy. Alan Gobi in the chat says, Boston loves you, Teddy. And so do we, brother. So we appreciate it as always.
Get out of here. It's a long day. I can't believe they forced you to get up here to hang with us here today. Unbelievable, Teddy. Make sure you visit him at WagerTalk.com. Don't forget about that $199 all access the rest of the year, every sport, your favorite handicapper, every play, bowl games, you name it, guys. For $199, it's an amazing deal. Take advantage of it. Go visit Teddy VR. Go visit Kyle over at WagerTalk.com and take advantage of that $199 offer. Now, only 6 games in college football. Have you hit that like button yet? We'd certainly appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and get your college basketball questions ready, because one of the best joining us here, and Bryan Leonard in the house talking college hoops. We talked yesterday on the college basketball tip-off show, Brian, this week about some of these games. It wasn't a huge card last night, but I think we all agreed that Northwestern probably shouldn't have been getting points against Illinois last night at home, and I think that game proved that we were definitely looking at that right. But today is a different animal. We got 1,000,001 games going on in college hoops. I've seen some questions in the chat already. Kelly is at this St. John's, Kansas State game. Did you happen to have a feeling on that game one way or the other, Brian?
Yeah, the only problem is Devian Smith is questionable for St. John's, and he's probably, well, he's their second best player, but I saw the lines moving up a little bit right before, and which means that maybe he's going to play. If he plays, that's probably the side to be on. If he doesn't play, I don't want any part of St. John's, and unfortunately I'm doing the show, so I can't really give you if he's playing or not, but it is something that either keeps me off the game or points me towards it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Kelly is not on St. John's. I'm just going to leave it at that, Brian. Talk to me here about some of these games coming up here today. Was there one that stuck out to you a little more than the rest here?
Yeah, and it's an early game. It's going to start in 15 minutes here, so I'm glad you gave me a chance to get to it. And that's the Nebraska and Michigan State game here. And I like this underrated Cornhuskers team. They enter with a 6-1 record. The only loss coming at a neutral site versus St. Mary's. In fact, they covered that game in a 77-74 defeat. They had an impressive 74-63 victory in their only other true road game. And they don't quite have the depth of the Spartans, but they're pretty comparable in this game. Michigan State, I've said it for many years, they get better as the year goes on. They come in at 7-2 on the season. Both their losses were on neutral courts to Kansas and Memphis, and they failed to cover either one of those games. They are off back-to-back wins over North Carolina and Minnesota, so they're not as hungry as Nebraska is in this contest here. And I don't rate this Michigan State home court very high, so I expect this one to go down to the wire, and we're getting up to 7 points now on Nebraska, and I just don't see that much of a difference between these two teams. I think there's value on Nebraska in a game that starts in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one there. Little Fred Hoiberg and company there at Nebraska got that program rolling here. What are we thinking about a couple of other games coming up? What about Wisconsin taking on Marquette, Brian? We'll get to Kentucky and Gonzaga coming up, but when you look at Wisconsin, just a kind of deflating loss at home to open up the Big Ten against Michigan, who people thought, hey, we love Dusty May, but it's going to take a little while for them to figure some things out there. But my goodness, they figured it out in the heart and quickly there in Michigan. But what does that say about Wisconsin's chances of bouncing back against Shaka and Marquette?
Well, Marquette's got a very good home court, as you might imagine. But they do have some guys who are out today that have normally been in the rotation. That's Chase Ross and Lowry, who will not be playing in this game. And that kind of shortens them up a little bit when it comes to their rotation. And that is a concern. I made the line on this 7 with those two out. But I really like them playing at home. From a power rating standpoint, I've got Marquette in the mid-teens, and I've got Wisconsin about 35. But Marquette's got the better defense, and they're very good in that regard. Wisconsin normally has good defense, and they're very physical, obviously playing in the Big Ten. But it's a game I'm a little bit concerned about, with Marquette having the lesser guys that are playing because, the other guys, Rossi played 9 games, Lowry 8. So they've been there just about every game of the season. So without them in there, it's kind of a wait and see attitude for me on this Marquette team.
So we got, let's talk about that Michigan game. I know there was a question that came in on that since we brought him up. What are we thinking? I know Andrew had that question about Michigan. That was a big number. I saw it at 8.5. They're laying against Iowa at home. Listen, when he was with FAU, they didn't have a problem covering these kinds of big spreads here, and it feels like it's the same kind of thing here with Golden and company. The pick and roll is working really well for Michigan right now, and they're playing a little bit of defense. So, are you worried about laying that kind of number with Michigan at home?
They're not only playing a little defense; they're playing a lot of defense. They rank 5th in the country right now in the defensive rank. Iowa's 80. And I think that's the big differential here. You also have a couple of Iowa players. Tridor is not going to play, and Koch is questionable. Not major players in this lineup. Sanford and Freeman are the 2 big players for Iowa. But Michigan's got better depth. I give them a pretty good home court advantage, probably about 4 points here. And the line has gone up a little bit, and I could see that. I'm even seeing 10s at some places, but I prefer the Michigan side in this one. It's just a team that I've had a lot of good success with. I played them the other day. I believe they were an underdog, and they won the game straight up. It's a situation for me where until I'm proven otherwise on Michigan, this is a team that I think has a lot of value. Golden's a guy who's a very good scorer, great rebounder. In fact, Wolf is a terrific rebounder, and that gives them a little bit of an advantage there. I prefer their rebounding over what Iowa has. So I like Michigan. It's not showing much of a differential from my power rating numbers, but I don't want to fade them here.
We did see that Kentucky-Gonzaga question coming in. It feels like only Kentucky fans are sold that this is a top 5 team because the market's not at this particular point. And it feels like the Zags, are they getting too much credit here? Too much love? What do you think we're going to get in this game? What was it, 5.5, I believe, for Gonzaga?
Well, I don't think they're getting too much love. I've got them as the best team in the country right now. Obviously, they don't play the opposition that others do during the regular season, but this is a team that will go out and they will play people all year long. Kentucky's coming in off of a loss, so I give them some credit in that regard. Plus, I really like the way that Kentucky hits the boards in these games. Gonzaga is the best team out there for myself from a power rating standpoint. It is a neutral site game, and it is a late game for a team for Kentucky. So that gives Gonzaga a little bit of an advantage there. But I like the Kentucky situation, but you're catching Kentucky off of a loss, and that was to Clemson just a couple days ago on the 3rd. So you get a quality team in Kentucky off of a loss. That's going to probably keep me off Gonzaga in this one, but sure going to be a lot of fun to watch.
All right, Brian. I mean, plenty of college hoops today. You are locked and loaded, and this $199 all-access deal is maybe the best deal possible here, especially with all the sports, Brian. What do you got for the clients today if they head on over?
Yeah, I've already put up an afternoon hockey play. By the way, we swept the board yesterday. Big 5% winner on Boise State. That was wire-to-wire winner. I thought I had a pretty good bet, but we've got a lot of good handicappers on the site disagreeing with me, but that one worked out well. But we've got the one hockey in the early games. I'm sure I'll have more later. 2 college basketball plays in early action. And I also have a couple plays in college football, 3 plays going on today. So we got a little bit of everything. It's still early. As Teddy pointed out, it's not even 9 o'clock Eastern here, or excuse me, 9 o'clock Pacific here in Vegas. So we got more time to add. So if you're looking for volume, quality volume, I'm not going to give you a ton of plays, but you'll get 5 or 6 just about every day, especially on Saturday. You can grab all that for the rest of the month for only $199. And as I mentioned, I've been winning in every sport, so it's going really well right now, seeing the board well, and just very excited about this college basketball season starting to round into conference action. And that's where we can come out and make some big money, because a lot of these teams treat the non-conference action different than college conference action. And we can make some money by going against what a lot of people have seen so far.
There is money to be made, Bryan Leonard, and we appreciate you talking some college hoops with us here on Last Call. Enjoy the games, Bri. Congrats on the 5% big winner last night on Boise. There'll be more where that comes from. And that'll do it, guys. We're about 8 or 9 minutes away from the start of championship week Saturday. Iowa State, Arizona State, Ohio, Miami of Ohio. Want to thank Art DeCesar over at the Westgate. Want to thank Gianni, of course. Don't forget Kyle Anthony, locked, loaded on a huge UFC card. Teddy Covers. Go get that Ohio, Miami of Ohio. He's locked in, guys, right now. Best bet today in college football for Teddy is on the MAC championship. And you just heard Bryan tell you, ready to roll here when it comes to college hoops. Big shout out to you guys in the chat room. Big Daddy, Daryl Turner, pleasure to see you. Andrew, as always, you guys rule. Don't forget, hit that thumbs up button there if you could. And don't forget, become part of the WagerTalk TV family by hitting the subscribe button or follow button if you're on IG or TikTok. Guys, we appreciate it as always. Last Call will be back tomorrow, the NFL edition, 12 o'clock Eastern time. That's the start. We'll hear again live from the Risk Room at the Westgate. Gianni will be by. We'll be breaking down all the games, so make sure you come back and join us again. But until then, guys, cash those damn tickets here today. We appreciate the time. We'll see you again tomorrow on Last Call. Good luck.